The Indiana Pacers did it again. They pulled off yet another comeback win with them being down 7 to 9 points with less than a minute left in the game. How do they keep doing this? We're going to talk about that. But before we get started, I want to tell you guys to hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share, and to continue to support my channel.
Is the Super Bowl.
Indiana with it. Haliburton. He'll take it. He'll backpedal a three for the win. And oh! He got it!
Oh, I think that's a two.
That is a two. You're right.
I think that's going to be a two.
That only ties the game. That ties the game.
We're going to be going to overtime.
We sure are.
The Indiana Pacers did it again. They pulled off yet another improbable comeback win over the New York Knicks, with them winning in overtime. I don't, how do they keep doing this? How do the Indiana Pacers keep doing this? It's something that's been boggling my mind ever since that game ended. Because this is now the third time in these playoffs, and this is really this is happening every series, at least once. They did it in Game 5 against the Milwaukee Bucks, the closeout game. The Pacers did it in Game 2 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And now they've done it in Game 1 against these New York Knicks. How do they keep doing this? And look, just for reference, the Indiana Pacers in Game 5 of the series against the Bucks, they were down 7 points with, I want to say, it was like under 47 seconds left in the game. And the Pacers came back and won. Against the Cleveland Cavaliers, they were also down 7 points with around under 50 seconds left in the game. And they came back and won. And against the New York Knicks, the Indiana Pacers were down 9 points with under a minute left in the game. They were down 9 points. And somehow, some way, these Indiana Pacers found some way for them to come from behind, force the game into overtime with Tyrese Haliburton hitting just an unbelievable. It looked like he was just, I think he had Mikal Bridges on him, and he was driving. He was making an attempt to drive to the basket, and then Mikal Bridges, cleared the lane, and Mitchell Robinson was helping him out, and then Tyrese saw it, and then he attempted to take a step back three, and it ended up being a two, and he ended up hitting the shot, and then he does the choke side. Because the Knicks, and shout out to Reggie Miller, he's doing, Tyrese Haliburton was doing his Reggie Miller impersonation, and Lord of Behold, like, that's what it was looking like for the Knicks. Like, it was looking like a choke job, because that's what it looked like in that moment. And the Pacers, in overtime, they took advantage of their opportunity, and they ended up winning the game. And they ended up winning by 3 points. And it's just incredible how they've been able to pull this out, man. And to me, when I look at the two main and look, when you look at the reason the Pacers ended up winning that game, we got to talk about Aaron Nesmith. You're right. Like, Aaron Nesmith, I think, is a guy that you want to talk about, because he got on a serious heater late in that game. He ended up hitting, I want to say, was it 8 threes? I think it was like 8 for 10, 8 for 9. No. He was 8 for 11 from 3. And so this is a guy who hit 8 threes. He got storming hot late in the game. He had about 3 or 4 threes late in the game. He couldn't miss. And so you got to give him credit for, helping the Pacers come back and win. He got really hot from 3. Tyrese Haliburton did a nice job of finding him in the corners and getting them off screens, and he made plays. And he made a lot of big threes, and Aaron Nesmith's been doing this for all year. This is a guy that over the course of the season, this guy was averaging 12 points a game. He was shooting over 50% from the field. He's shooting over 43% from 3. And so this is a guy that's having a really good shooting season for the Indiana Pacers. And so you want to give Aaron Nesmith some credit. And also, this is a guy he's found his niche, man, with these Pacers, over the last 2 to 3 years. This is a guy that was drafted 14th overall in 2020. He played for the Boston Celtics, and then a couple of years later, the Boston Celtics ended up moving him I think he was a throw-in when they got Malcolm Brogdon that year in 2020, was it 2022? Something like that. And so, it was 2022. Yeah. And so, Aaron Nesmith was a throw-in in that deal, and he's found his home, man, in Indiana. Like, he's been a real contributor for that team. He's a key player for that team. He gives them some toughness. He's one of their best perimeter defenders. He's scrappy. He's always in some scuffles. You saw him early in the game. He was trying to draw a charge on Jalen Brunson. He was guarding him, and Jalen Brunson got in a little bit of a scuffle in that game. And so this is a guy that, he gives the Indiana Pacers some toughness and an identity. And he was a big reason why the Pacers were able to come back and win. But the thing about these Pacers and why I believe they've been able to miraculously come from behind and win these games, I think the number one reason for why the Pacers have been able to pull all of this off is just the pressure that they create on the opposition defensively. They're full court pressing dudes, between Aaron Nesmith and Andrew Nembhard. They're pressuring Jalen Brunson. They're pressuring Josh Hart. They're pressuring Mikal Bridges. They're pressuring McBride, right? They're pressuring ball handlers, right? And it just, when you spend the whole entire game pressuring, getting in the backcourt, pressuring ball handlers, it tires them out. It wears them down. And so, and late in the game, when the Knicks are kind of, feeling the effects of the pressure, all of a sudden they're thinking, and all of a sudden they're kind of worn down, and so they're not focused enough because they're just worn down and tired. And so you got the Pacers, Rick Carlisle's having this team pressuring ball handlers on the defensive end, and offensively, they just go. They play faster than any team in the league, or almost any team in the league. They run off misses. If you turn the ball over against the Pacers, you might as well just forget about it because they're gonna score on the other end. They're gonna get fast break buckets, and they're just gonna score, And even off misses, they're just running. That ball is quick ahead, towards the other end of the floor. Tyrese Haliburton's doing a nice job with these kick ahead passes that he does. And so this is a team that's playing fast off, they're forcing turnovers. They're running off misses. They're even running off makes. If you score, you can't celebrate because the Pacers are gonna get that ball in from out of bounds, and they're just gonna get it in within 3 or 4 seconds, and they'll be all across the court, with a threat to score. And they do it constantly. When I'm talking about the Indiana Pacers, they play at a high octane pace that it's hard to replicate because not many teams play like the Pacers. Not many teams play at the pace that they play at. Like you look at earlier in the game, the Pacers were they couldn't miss. They were hunting Karl Anthony Towns and pick and roll with Tyrese Haliburton. He was finding Miles Turner on pick and pops, and he was knocking open jumpers. I think he scored like 11 points in the first quarter He was like 5 from 5 from the field. Like, Miles Turner was cooking. And a lot of it was off pick and roll from Tyrese Haliburton, because Tyrese Haliburton is doing a nice job of just playing pick and roll, playing fast, making sure the Knicks defense isn't set. And the Pacers were able to take advantage of that earlier in the game. Now, the Knicks, they kind of got it going a little bit, and they kind of slowed that down. And they were able to get in the offensive rhythm. But the Pacers earlier in that game did a nice job of establishing their identity, establishing how they want to play basketball. And this is just how the Pacers do things, man. Like, they are relentless in how they go about things on the floor. And they play fast. They get up in you. They force you to play faster than typically how you want to play. And it's hard, man. Like, it's hard. And the other reason why I think the Pacers have been able to pull these games out, and look, whether you love them or whether you hate them, but Tyrese Haliburton, the guy has been clutch, especially in these playoffs. And Tyrese Haliburton has taken this most overrated player in the league thing in the players poll that was out, 3 weeks ago or so. He's taking that to heart, because Tyrese Haliburton has, especially late in these games, boy, has he delivered. And maybe I should owe Tyrese Haliburton an apology, because when we talk about late game heroics, I talk about Jalen Brunson and what he's done. But Tyrese Haliburton has done the same thing. And you just got to give him his due, man. Tyrese Haliburton in the clutch has brought it. He hit a game winner against Giannis in the game in the first round. He hit a game winner against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he hit it wasn't really a game winner against the Nets, but he hit the tying game shot to send the game into overtime against the Knicks. This is kind of what Tyrese Haliburton is doing. And like I said before, Tyrese Haliburton is not a flashy player. He's not a guy that's going to consistently get you 30 points every game, even though he had 31 and 11 against the Knicks. Got to give him credit for that. But what makes Tyrese Haliburton tough is what makes players like Trae Young tough. Is what makes players like Luka Doncic tough to guard. Is what makes, to a higher end, what makes Nikola Jokic tough. Is guys that are great playmakers while also being threats to score the basketball. They all just put pressure on your defense because you don't know what's coming. If you playing, these guys, when I'm talking about a player like Tyrese Haliburton, like, you got to send these guys different looks. If you play drop coverage against Tyrese Haliburton, he's going to kill you because he has a nice little floater that he goes to. If you go under on Tyrese Haliburton, he has a nice little three-point shot. He can catch and shoot threes. He can hit step-back threes, especially if he has a big guarding him. He's good enough to take you to the basket. And if you double him, he's tall enough where he can see over the defense and he'll make the right pass. He can find open shooters. And he has a lot of shooters in Indiana with Neesmith and Nembhard and Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam and Mathurin and Obi Toppin. Like, they got shooters galore in Indiana, man. And also half of those guys are guys that can also roll to the rim, like a Siakam or an Obi Toppin or even a Miles Turner to a lesser degree. And so Tyrese Haliburton has a lot of options that he can just throw the ball to. And that's what makes Indiana so good, man. That's why the Indiana Pacers closed the year, 41-16 over the last 57 games. And like I said before, like, that was the 4th best record in the league. And so this is a good team in Indiana. And so it's just, it makes them so tough. And it's interesting with the pace that they play at. Because when they're pressuring ball handlers the way Indiana does, I compare it to the like a football team running a football. You know, when you're running a football, typically sometimes early in the game, you get 2 yards, you get 3 yards, sometimes you get 5 yards. Then you get 2 yards or 3 yards or 7 yards or 5 yards or 2 yards or 3 yards. You don't get the long, early in the game when you're running the football, you don't get the big yardage early, right? But when it gets late in the game, those 2 to 3 to 5 yard runs turn into 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 yard runs. Because when you're running the football, the more times you run the football, the more times the defense is going to get tired. And when the defense is getting tired from stopping these 2 to 3 to 5 yard runs, when they get tired, those runs turn into 20 to 30 to 40 yard runs. And when you compare that to what Indiana's doing, when they're pressuring you and they're playing fast, the opposition gets tired. Just like when in football, when you're running the ball, the defense later in the game gets tired. And when you're pressuring the way Indiana does against the Knicks, and when they're running the ball, they're playing fast, they're making the New York Knicks tired. And when the Knicks are tired, like they were late in the game, they lose focus. They don't have the attention to detail isn't there. And when you lose focus against the Indiana Pacers, that's when they strike. That's when they take advantage of you, because they don't stop. They keep coming. They keep going at you. And the last thing you want to be against the Pacers is tired, is worn out, is being out of gas, because that's when the Pacers strike. And they did it against the Knicks in that game, because the Knicks it just felt like they just lost a little focus. They ran out of gas. It seemed like they were a little tired just due to the pressure and the pace that the Pacers were playing at. And the Pacers took advantage of it. And this is the third time that they've done this. They did it against the Bucks in Game 5. They did it against the Pacers they did it against the Cleveland Cavaliers in Game 2. And they did it against the New York Knicks in Game 1. This is just kind of how things have been. And I saw a stat in that since 1998, teams that have led by, I guess, was it like not double digits or 9 points in the fourth in under a minute since 1998 was like 0 and 1,141 or something like that. And the Knicks were the first team to actually break that. They ended up losing the game. And so it's just, I don't know, man. Like, it's incredible to me. It's incredible. It's incredible how the Pacers have been able to just pull these games out, man. These comeback wins out, because truth be told, when you're looking at that game, for 53 out of, I would say, 38 to 40 minutes out of the 53 minutes were played I would say about 38 to 40 minutes out of the overall 53 minutes that were played, I thought the New York Knicks were the better team. I did. The Knicks, for about 38 to 40 minutes out of the 53 minutes, meaning the 48 minutes of the game and then overtime, I thought 30 to 40 minutes of that 53 minutes, the Knicks were the better team. I thought the Knicks, for large portions of that game, even though they started the game off slow, like if you want to look at the range of that game where I thought the Pacers were better, I thought the Pacers were better the first 5 or 6 minutes of the game. I thought they were better the last 3 minutes of the game. And obviously I thought they were better in overtime. And between all of that, I thought the Knicks did a better job of just establishing their identity. and Jalen Brunson got going, and the Pacers could not guard him. And as a matter of fact, the only thing that was stopping Jalen Brunson was him getting in foul trouble. And so Jalen Brunson had, what was it, 38 points, I think something like that, maybe close to 40. Like, Jalen Brunson was awesome. So he had it going. Karl Anthony Towns had over 30 points. He was doing his thing. Mitchell Robinson was making an impact, with the rebounding. And you saw the Knicks' size kind of overwhelm Indiana at times. Like, they could not keep the Knicks off the offensive glass. The Knicks' size with Karl Anthony Towns and Mitchell Robinson had a real effect over the Pacers for large portions of the game. And so, and as a matter of fact, man, when Jalen Brunson got in foul trouble, when the Knicks went on a 12-0 run and they got the game up to within, 16 points or 17 points? And at that point, I remember tweeting that, man, with this run without Jalen Brunson, this game's over pretty much. And that's how I was thinking. And then the Pacers just said, no, not today, not tonight. This is our time. And they went on a run on them. They went on a run there themselves, and they came back and they wore the Knicks down, and they forced the game in the overtime, and that's all she wrote. And so this is a tough loss for the Knicks, man. It's a tough loss, and I'm somebody who picked the Knicks in this series. Like, I had the Knicks in 7 games, and I'm gonna stick with that. But this is a tough one for the Knicks, and this is a tough one from their fans. Like, I can't imagine what their fans are going through right now. I can't imagine what Stephen A. Smith is going through. So it's a tough day for Knicks fans. But hey, man, sometimes you just gotta, come to the realization that this is kind of what the Pacers have been doing throughout these playoffs. Like, these are the Pacers are the king of the comeback. This team doesn't get fazed when they're down 8-9 points with under a minute left. They just figure out a way to miraculously come back from these deficits, and they for whatever reason, these teams just lose focus and they make mistakes and they make mental errors, and the Knicks are just pouncing on it. This is kind of what the Indiana Pacers do. It's kind of what they've done throughout these playoffs. And so, look, man, shout out to the Pacers for making that comeback. Shout out to a fun, outstanding basketball game, because that was a fun, outstanding game. And hey, man, that was an awesome game that I witnessed last night. It was, and it's a tough one for the Knicks. Big, and congrats to the Pacers for stealing that game 1. And look, man, I think there's more to come with this series, man. I think this is only the beginning. I think this is going to be a fun series, and we'll see what the Knicks are made off in game 2, man. We'll see if they can, they can bounce back from it, because they gonna need to. And man, we'll see what happens. But it was a great start to the Eastern Conference Finals, and we're gonna see what's more to come.